I guess I should start at the beginning because what happened is hard to explain without some context. I wasn't always like this, and I didn't always have these urges. But I think we all have a breaking point, and looking back now, I can see how everything led to this moment. I just didn't see it coming. I met Chris when I was in my early 20s. He was charming, sweet, and everything you could want in a guy. We clicked right away. And after a few months of dating, I knew I wanted him to be the one. We spent every waking minute together. I didn't want anyone else. He was my best friend and my partner in everything. When he proposed, I was over the moon. It felt like everything was falling into place, and I couldn't have been happier. But something started changing after we got engaged. Not in a big way, but in small, subtle ways that I didn't really notice at first. Chris was a great guy. He always had a stable job. He took care of things around the house, and he was affectionate in his own way. But I think the problem was that he was too good to be true. I mean, there was never anything wrong with him, but somewhere along the way, I started feeling like I was missing something. I guess it's not unusual to feel like that in a relationship, right? Like, you're so comfortable with someone that you forget what it's like to feel excited, to have your heart race for someone. Chris was always there, always dependable. But I began to crave a sense of unpredictability. I wanted a spark, something that could make me feel alive again. This is where things get blurry for me. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and decided I was going to cheat. It wasn't like I went looking for it, but one day I ran into Matt at a party. We used to know each other in college, but we hadn't really kept in touch after graduation. Matt had always been the kind of guy who lived on the edge, full of energy, spontaneous. Everything about him screamed excitement. At first, it was just casual conversation. I wasn't thinking anything of it, but I guess there was a part of me that was drawn to him. It wasn't just his looks. It was this magnetism he had, this ability to make you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started hanging out more, just catching up. But it wasn't long before the line between just friends and something more started to blur. I don't know what happened, but the more I saw him, the more I felt this pull. I was trying to ignore it, trying to stay loyal to Chris, but it felt like I was fighting something I couldn't control. And then one night, it happened. We were having a few drinks at his place, talking and laughing. It felt like I had known him forever, like all of the tension and frustration I had been feeling just melted away when I was with him. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were kissing. At first, I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. But then, I didn't want to stop. I had never felt this alive, this wanted, and I wasn't thinking about the consequences. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, a mistake, right? But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just a physical thing. The more I saw Matt, the more I felt connected to him. It wasn't just about the sex, though honestly, that part was intense. It was about the fact that he made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just someone's fiancée, someone's future wife. With Chris, it had become routine. With Matt, every moment felt like an adventure. I kept telling myself I would stop, that I could fix things with Chris. But every time I saw Matt, the desire grew stronger. I was caught in a web of my own making, torn between the man who had been so steady and reliable, and the one who made me feel like I was living again. The worst part, I kept it a secret. I couldn't bring myself to tell Chris. The guilt ate me up inside, but at the same time, I didn't want to face what I had done. I kept telling myself that it was a one-off thing, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The more time passed, the more I realized I was in too deep. I had never imagined I would be capable of betraying Chris like that. He was a good man. He had always been there for me. But there I was, lying to his face every day, pretending everything was fine. The worst part is that I convinced myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I justified it by telling myself that I was just trying to find something that had been missing. It wasn't about love. It was about feeling seen, feeling important again. I told myself that I deserved that. But that's the lie I was living. I was betraying someone who had never once let me down. I guess I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to get out of the mess I had created for myself. I'd like to say I regretted what I was doing from the very start, but the truth is, I didn't. Not at first. In those early days, it felt like a rush. It felt like the world was wide open, like I had rediscovered something I had lost. With Matt, it was easy. It was simple. He didn't expect anything from me except to be myself. He didn't care about my past, my baggage, or my future. He was just here, in the moment, and it felt good. That was the thing I didn't realize at the time, how good it felt to have that kind of attention again. I mean, Chris was always loving, but he didn't make me feel wanted the way Matt did. It's hard to explain, but with Matt, everything was urgent. Every look, every touch felt like it meant something. He was constantly in motion, physically and emotionally, and I was caught up in it all. But eventually, the guilt started to creep in. I couldn't ignore it forever, no matter how much I tried. I would go home to Chris, smile at him, kiss him goodnight, and feel like a fraud. I would lie awake at night, wondering if he could tell something was off. The worst part was that I didn't even know how to face what I had done. How do you tell the person you love that you've been with someone else? How do you explain that you betrayed their trust in the worst way possible? I wanted to stop. I really did. I even tried. There were a few times when I thought about calling Matt and telling him it was over, that I needed to focus on my relationship with Chris, and that I was making a huge mistake. But then I would see Matt, and all of that would go out the window. I would lose myself in his eyes, in his smile, in the way he made me feel. And just like that, I'd fall right back into the cycle. One day, Chris and I went out for dinner, and I could feel something was different between us. It wasn't anything overt, just a subtle shift. He asked me how my day was, and I realized I didn't even know what to say. How could I tell him the truth? How could I tell him that I was falling apart inside, that I was lying to him every time I looked him in the eye? I felt like I was drowning. I remember that night so clearly. We were sitting at a restaurant, eating our food, and I could barely focus on the conversation. My mind was racing with thoughts of Matt and the lie I was living. Chris kept talking, but it felt like I was listening from a distance, like he was miles away. The guilt was unbearable, and I wanted to tell him everything, but the words wouldn't come. It was then that I realized just how far gone I was. I had fallen into a pattern of avoiding the truth, pretending everything was fine, when in reality, everything was falling apart. And what was worse, I didn't even know how to stop it. I convinced myself that I wasn't hurting Chris, that I wasn't doing anything that couldn't be fixed. I told myself that this was just a phase, something I would get over once I figured out what was wrong with me. But I knew deep down that it was more than that. This wasn't just a phase. This was something I had chosen, and I had crossed a line that I could never uncross. A few days later, things took a turn that I didn't expect. Chris came home from work early, and I wasn't ready for it. I had just come back from Matt's place, and the guilt was eating me alive. I was trying to get myself together, trying to be the fiancé he deserved, but I was failing. I could tell something was off when he walked in. He had this look on his face, something between suspicion and concern. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice calm but tense. It was like he knew something wasn't right. I froze. I wanted to answer him, to tell him everything, but I couldn't. I couldn't even find the words. Instead, I forced a smile, trying to act normal, but I could see that Chris wasn't buying it. He stared at me for a long time, like he was searching for something in my eyes, and I had no idea how to hide it anymore. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his voice softer this time. And that's when it hit me I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep lying. But I didn't know how to be honest without destroying everything. Chris was everything I had ever wanted. He was loyal, patient, kind, and loving. He didn't deserve this. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to undo the damage I had done. For the first time, I felt the weight of what I had done. I had hurt the person who loved me more than anything, and I couldn't take it back. But the more I tried to push the guilt away, the more I realized it wasn't going anywhere. I started thinking about what was happening between us, between me and Matt, and I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions. Chris wanted a life with me, a future, a family. But Matt wanted something else. He wanted the now, the excitement, the thrill of being with someone who wasn't stuck in the routine of a relationship. I didn't know what I wanted. Or maybe I did, but I wasn't ready to admit it to myself. I wanted both. And I knew that wasn't possible, And so I kept up the lie. Every day, I pretended to be happy, to be in love with Chris, even though I wasn't. Or at least, not in the way I used to be. I wasn't the same person anymore, and that was what scared me the most. Because I knew I was losing myself, and I didn't know how to stop it. But then everything came crashing down. I had been living this double life for months, and it was starting to feel unbearable. It was like I was two different people, and neither one of them felt real anymore. I had my life with Chris, the man I was supposed to marry, the man who loved me. And then there was Matt, who I had never planned on falling for, but who had become my escape, my secret, my mistake. Every day I woke up feeling like I was walking a tightrope, terrified that I would slip, that I would lose everything. But I didn't want to face the truth. I didn't want to admit to myself that what I was doing was wrong, because if I did, I would have to face the consequences. And honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I was addicted to the rush of sneaking around, to the adrenaline of keeping the secret. It was like a drug, and I couldn't stop. Then, one day, Chris did the unthinkable. I don't know how, but he found out. Maybe it was something I said, some slip of the tongue, or maybe he just felt that something was wrong. He never let on that he suspected anything, but I could tell he was different. There was this underlying tension, an unspoken question hanging in the air between us. He started asking questions, the kind of questions that made my heart race and my stomach twist. "Are you happy?" He asked one night, just out of the blue. He was sitting across from me at the dinner table, looking at me with those big, soft eyes, and I could see it in his face. He knew something was off. He wasn't accusing me, but he wasn't letting it slide either. I froze. How do you answer that when you know you're lying? How do you tell someone you've been with another man while they've been nothing but loyal to you? I wanted to say something, anything, that would make it go away, but nothing felt right, so I said the first thing that came to mind, the thing I thought would cover it up. "Of course I'm happy. I'm just stressed with the wedding planning, you know. It's a lot to think about." He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. I could feel the gap between us widening, and I knew, deep down, that he wasn't going to let it go. I had tried to keep everything buried, to keep the lies from spilling out, but now I could feel them all closing in on me. That's when I started to panic. I knew Chris better than anyone. I knew how much he loved me, how much he would sacrifice for me. He would do anything to make things work, but I wasn't sure if I could say the same about myself anymore. How could I marry a man when I didn't even know who I was anymore? How could I look him in the eye? Knowing what I had done, the tension between us only grew over the next few days. Chris was distant, but he didn't confront me. Not directly, anyway. He was trying to give me space, but it was clear that something had shifted. I could feel it in every conversation, every touch, every kiss. It wasn't the same. And then came the day when it all came crashing down. We were supposed to meet with the wedding planner that afternoon. Chris had made a joke earlier about how he couldn't believe we were so close to the big day, and we both laughed, but it felt like a mask we were both wearing. We were both pretending that everything was fine, and we both knew it. But when we walked into the office, everything changed. I don't know how it happened, but Chris saw something on my phone. Maybe it was a message from Matt. I can't really remember, but I do know that whatever it was, it broke the dam. I didn't even get a chance to explain. One moment we were standing there, discussing flowers and seating arrangements, and the next, Chris was looking at me like he didn't even know me. "What's this?" he asked, holding up my phone. His voice was calm, but there was this edge to it that I couldn't ignore. I knew it wasn't just the message. It was everything. All of the lies, all of the guilt, everything I had been hiding from him for months, all coming to a head. I can explain. I started, but my words sounded hollow. Even to me. Chris's face went pale. He set the phone down on the table like it was something disgusting, something he couldn't touch. "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me this whole time. That you've been seeing someone else. Or is it something else I don't know about?" I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I wanted to apologize, to tell him everything, but I didn't know how to make it right. How do you fix something that's broken beyond repair? How do you take back something you've already done? Chris's eyes were filled with pain, but also something else: disappointment. And it cut me deeper than anything else. "I deserve better than this, don't I?" he said quietly, his voice trembling slightly. "I deserve someone who will be honest with me. Someone who won't lie about the things that matter most." I couldn't argue with that. I had betrayed him in the worst way possible, and there was no excuse for it. I could tell him that I was sorry, that I had made a mistake, but it wouldn't change the fact that I had already hurt him beyond repair. I had already shattered everything we had. "You're right," I said, the words barely above a whisper. "I don't deserve you. I don't deserve any of this." Chris shook his head, stepping back from me. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can even look at you the same way after this." And that was when it hit me, the reality of everything. I had lost him. I had lost the one person who had always had my back, who had trusted me, who had loved me unconditionally, and there was no going back. He didn't want to hear my excuses. He didn't want my apologies. All he wanted was the truth, and by the time I gave it to him, it was too late. The worst part wasn't that I had cheated. It was that I had broken someone who truly believed in me. Someone who had never once questioned my loyalty until I gave him a reason to. And by then, I couldn't undo what I had done. Chris left that day. He didn't say goodbye. He just packed his things and walked out. The last words he said to me were, "I can't do this anymore. I can't marry someone who's been lying to me for so long." And that was it. The end. I never saw him again after that. It's hard to explain the emptiness I felt after Chris left. In the days and weeks that followed, it was like I was walking around in a fog. The house felt empty, too quiet, like everything that had once been bright and full of life had been sucked out of it. I couldn't escape the guilt, the shame. Every corner of the place held a memory of him. His clothes still in the closet, his toothbrush still in the bathroom, the way he'd always leave his shoes by the door, as if he'd be back any minute. But he wasn't coming back, and deep down, I knew that. I couldn't stop thinking about that day, about the look in his eyes when he found out. He wasn't angry at first. He was just hurt, and I felt that hurt in my bones, even though I had brought it on myself. I had destroyed the one person who had always believed in me, who had always trusted me, and I had no one to blame but myself. There was no one to blame, no one to point the finger at except the woman staring back at me in the mirror. After he left, I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone what had happened. Not at first. I went to work. I kept up with the routines. But everything felt hollow. I would run into friends or family, and they'd ask how Chris and I were doing, and I'd fake a smile, say something like, "Oh, we're fine. Just a little busy with wedding stuff." But inside, I was dying. I felt like I had been carrying this huge weight for so long, and now that it was out, I was crushed under it. The hardest part was seeing the life I had built with Chris slipping away. I didn't just lose him. I lost everything that came with him. The future we had planned, the dreams we had talked about, the way we had made each other feel like we were the center of the universe. I lost me. I didn't recognize the person I had become, and I hated her. I tried to reach out to Matt, but it was like I couldn't escape the mess I had created. He didn't call me back the first time I tried, then when I called again, he just didn't answer. I knew why, of course. He wasn't interested in fixing things. To him, I was just another fleeting thrill. He didn't care about the fallout or the consequences. I had already seen that side of him. But for some reason, I had allowed myself to believe he was different. I waited for an apology from Matt, something to make me feel less like the villain in my own story. But none came, and then I realized he didn't owe me an apology. I had chosen him. I had chosen to betray Chris, to lie, to hurt him. Matt was just a part of the mess I had created. Weeks went by, and the pain didn't fade. It got sharper, like a knife lodged in my chest, and every day, I had to remind myself that I deserved it. I deserved to feel this way. I had betrayed the man who trusted me, and no amount of crying or apologizing could change that. Chris had been a good man, and I had ruined everything. I could blame it on the way I felt, on the emptiness I had convinced myself was something I needed to fill, but in the end, it was my fault. I had done this to myself. I eventually called my mom, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the full story. I couldn't say the words out loud, but she could tell something was wrong. Honey, you've been so distant lately. What's going on? She asked, and I could hear the worry in her voice. She was trying to reach me, trying to find a way to make me see that I wasn't the person I was pretending to be. I broke down when I finally told her. I didn't have the courage to say everything at once, but in pieces, I told her what I had done. I told her about Matt, about how I had betrayed Chris, about how I was lost and confused and too afraid to admit that I didn't know who I was anymore. She didn't yell at me, didn't scold me. She just listened, and then she said, "You have to face what you've done. Sweetheart, you can't run from it forever." And she was right. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide behind excuses or blame it on feeling unfulfilled. I had made a choice, and now I had to live with the consequences. Chris had moved on. I found out through mutual friends that he had started dating again. Part of me was angry about it, but most of me felt a deep sadness. How could I be angry at him for finding happiness when I was the one who had torn us apart? I spent a long time thinking about everything. The mistakes, the lies, the way I had destroyed something so beautiful. I wish I could tell you that I found some kind of redemption, that I figured out how to fix myself and get things back on track. But the truth is, I don't have any answers. I don't know how to undo the hurt I caused. The only thing I do know is that I'll never forget Chris, and I'll never forget the person I became in that time. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I have to live with what I did. It's the only thing I can do now. And as for Matt, well, I haven't heard from him in months. I don't think I ever will again. It's strange, but I don't feel the same pull toward him anymore. Maybe because I've realized something important, the excitement, the thrill. It's fleeting. But the trust, the love, the connection I had with Chris, that was real. And I threw it away. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I'll ever get another chance at happiness, or if I'll ever find someone who makes me feel the way Chris did. But I know one thing for sure. I'll never make the same mistake again. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only thing I can hold on to.